Okay, it's the Jedi again here, and this is a description of one of the other times that I forgot to mention where the Jedi, myself, indeed use the Force, or magic if you wish to call it. It was as I've explained on the thread, back in 2011 May in Mornington at night, near the Beachfront Avenue, about a block back. I was attacked and nearly killed in Mornington in late May at night. I believe it was a Wednesday night. And what happened was, high up on the hill, well, not high up on the hill, but up on the hill at about 8 o'clock, I was socialising with my friends at one of my friends' beach houses near the beach, near the cliff, in Mornington. And then I went to go back to my house because I was renting my old Mornington party house for about 1 or 2 months around May in 2011. I just did a brief rental once again after my main rental in 2009. And I was headed back there in that direction. Down from his house, directly at the front of his house near the beach and near the cliff, is a hill that goes down from his house. So I skateboarded down that hill once leaving their house, my friend's house at the top of the hill. And then I stopped at the bottom of the hill and began walking. I skateboarded a little bit and began walking once again at the bottom flat of the hill, and it directly goes into, there's a flat space, and then it goes directly up into another hill. Now, I know this area quite well because I've lived and grown up there most of my life. Well, not most of my life, but a lot, and mainly most of my life. Now, as I walked up the hill, there was one street back parallel to the Esplanade. And as I walked up the hill, I got halfway up the hill, after coming down the hill and going along the flat at the bottom and then going up the hill, halfway up the hill, I heard all of a sudden a man shout. Now, I turned around, looked backwards and across the road, and there was a large, heavy-set man with short hair, I'm not too sure what colour, and he was shouting and pointing at me. Immediately I knew, because I've been famous in Mornington for at least about, I'd say over a year and a half, or perhaps, no, 2 years, I knew straight away that it was a jealousy attack, and I knew straight away, I didn't know how many were involved at the start, but there was just one in view, and I knew that there were more others around that were about to come out of the darkness and attack me. Instantly, aware of my danger that I was in, aware of the danger that I was in, I began skateboarding directly down the hill. My first getaway part was skateboarding back to the bottom of the hill, and I sped directly down there, directly down to the bottom of the hill, directly down, and then got to the bottom, jumped off my skateboard, took my bearings, and looked around, and directly behind me, 2 men came out of the driveways, and I knew that straight away that they were assailants and they were going to attack me, if not murder me. I recognised some of the houses nearby and immediately jumped the small white picket fence into the front garden of a double-storey, very nice, new modern sort of weatherboard stylish house. I noticed that there were lights on in the front lounge room at the bottom, like over the decking at the front of the house, and there were also lights on upstairs. So I realised straight away then, I heard shouts and knew that they were right on top of me, and I had basically 20 seconds at the most to think and get myself out of this trap. Now, the first part of getting away from it was the fluke, is that I managed to, at the bottom of the hill, stop around this house that was one of the reasons that saved me, because that house in particular was the one that I went to. Now, as I crouched next to a bush behind the picket fence of this large beach house, I was making my mind in a matter of seconds. I was looking towards the window of the lounge room across from the decking, and I thought to myself, smash the window with my skateboard and enter the house and yell out very loudly something along the lines of, "Please help me. I'm not trying to attack you or rob your house. There are people out there that are trying to kill me or attack me and use violence on me. Can you please call the police? They're just directly out there now. I have money in my bank account. I can pay for the broken window," and just yell that out real quick and just do that way of getting away from being murdered. Now, for some reason, I believe it was magic or the force or magic that told me. It gave me my instinct. It told my instincts to not smash the window, just run up to the front door and knock or use the doorbell and ask them for a taxi. Now, I did that instantly. I made the instant decision like that, yep, just to do that doorbell one. So I went and I knocked on the door, or rang the doorbell, I can't quite remember, and a mother and her teenage son answered the door, older teenage son. And she was quite wealthy, because it's a very wealthy house right near the beach, about, like, 1 street back from the beach, quite a wealthy house. And she would have been a little bit sort of like, cautious, because who's this knocking on my door with a skateboard in his hand at this time of night, just after 8 o'clock at night. And anyway, immediately I asked her, This is basically how the conversation went, and this is when I used the Force. I used my powers of persuasion, Jedi persuasion, Force persuasion, to persuade her that there was not any alarm happening. Even when I told her that there was men out the front later, I'll get to that part in a second. I used the Force to persuade her that there was no problem occurring in the general vicinity of myself and themselves and their house. I asked her simply to the fact that my friend lived up at the hill, which was true. That was a true part of the story, which I used to persuade her. My friend lived up at the house, but I told him that he wasn't home, and that I'd driven my car there, and I knocked on the door and they weren't home, and my car's run out of my car's battery's stuck for some reason is dead, and my phone, I didn't bring my phone with me. I left it at home, and I told her that I lived in Balnarring, and that's where I wanted to catch a taxi to, and that was in fact a lie. It was actually a fib. I was using the Jedi persuasion, the Force persuasion, and that's exactly what it told me to save my life. And then after I asked her to call a taxi to Balnarring, and I said I needed to use the phone to call a taxi because my car's died, the battery, my friend's at the top of the hill, and she knew I recognised the streets because I named the street names, that this was his name, and the street name that my friend was on, the adjacent street up at the top of the hill. And basically what I did then was, she called the taxi for me, and her son stood there at the door, the open door, and I realised that they were going to leave me outside on their veranda with the taxi coming, and that's when I get attacked. And I looked quickly across, and I saw a car pull up, one car pull up directly across the road, and I saw a man walk in front of it, and then I heard them make noises because that was their mistake. They started yelling, not yelling, but they're talking loudly. And so I briefly, this is using Jedi persuasion, instead of saying to the woman, "There's a man over there, and there's a few men over there, and I think they want to do something, like attack me or something," and then she'd probably just say, "Shut the door." This rich woman and her son would shut the door and leave me out there hanging with my life on the line. Now what I did was I used the persuasion to tell her instead that, excuse me, the Force or magic told me what to say. It instructed me on how to save my life. And what I did was I asked the woman, I said, just call the taxi, and she said the taxi's on its way. And before they shut the door, I said, look, there's some people out there yelling. I think there's some commotion going on at the front of her house. Made no mention to the attack, or the violent attack, or the murder attempt. Pointed out to the car and said, I think there's some people yelling out there. There might be something commotion going on out the front of your house, madam. And she looked out there, and that's when they bailed off. That's when they peeled off the car. She came out on the door, and I pointed towards the car that had the lights on, and a few men standing around it. And then that's when she looked at it and said, I wonder what they're doing. And they thought that she was looking directly at him, and I believe they thought that I mind tricked them as well, because they thought that she was going to call the cops. They thought when she came out on the veranda and looked at the car directly for a few moments, they thought that she'd been told that they were trying to attack me, and they're gonna call the police and just stay there at the front of the house. The police are coming. Don't come in the house. The police are coming. And so the car went off. The men disappeared into the darkness. They melted into the shadows, and that's when I believe I used the Force or magic to save my life, because they thought the woman was going to call the cops because she looked directly at them. She walked down on her veranda and looked directly at them, and not just that. Once the woman closed her door, I asked her if it was sort of raining, so I said, I'm going to get wet out there on the road. Can I please stand on your veranda while I wait for the taxi, madam? And she said, yes, no, fine, no problem. She was in no way aware that there was any danger to myself, herself, or anyone. That's how smooth I made it. And either way, I waited, and I realised that the reason why they didn't attack me in the 5 minutes it took for the taxi to arrive at the front of her house, the 5 minutes it took for the taxi to arrive, the reason why they didn't swarm me on the front decking was because they thought that she'd seen him, called the cops, and they didn't think that it was worth it. Storming her front garden and attacking me on her deck right at the front of her front door and her windows where she was sitting watching the lounge room TV.